Hello and welcome to the Colossians 2:7 Podcast in English. Du hörst gerade eine monatliche Folge für unsere Freunde in den Staaten. While our regular listeners are primarily German, we are delighted to have a growing number of listeners from the States as well. Odds are you know us personally, and I want to thank you for tuning in. In this special episode, we invite you, dear friend, to join Willi and me as we engage in thoughtful conversation about life and ministry within the German context.
How often do you guys send prayer updates?
Every other month.
Yeah. Like, has it been consistently that way?
Yeah, pretty much. Heidi, I mean, it's not always in the beginning of the month, but usually, in the very beginning we did every month.
Yeah.
But there's not that much to report every time, and so we've been doing every other month.
Yeah. I think my dad used to do like once a week.
Yeah, I think Charlie used to do once a week or every other week.
But those were like super short ones. Like it had 3 praises and 3 requests.
Okay, yeah.
And I kind of adopted that too. At the bottom of my prayer update, there's 3 praises and 3 requests.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Did you get the one I sent yesterday or 2 days ago?
Yes.
And so I used to do it once a month, but then something happened like a year, 2 years ago, and then it was once a quarter.
Whoa, that's
So,
a switch.
More like once a season. But as of this year, it's once a month
No, there you go.
so far, which means twice.
So yeah, I was going to say you better keep up because soon it's going to be the next month.
Yeah, most of us have been sick and it's been working around.
Yes.
Thankfully, and this is so much nicer than when I was working at PDI, because there you would get 3 sick days for 1 point. And
Okay.
if you had enough points, you wouldn't get your 5% raise at the end of 6 months. But here, you simply call the doctor's office, say, "Hey, I was sick yesterday, and I think I'll be sick the rest of the week," and she'll write you a sick slip.
Yes.
But you still get paid.
Of course. We live in Germany.
So that's nice.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I do not like the unpaid sick leave because you can't really help it if you get sick.
And this was on Sunday, I think. Our church secretary, Maria, said, "Aaron, as your church secretary, I need to tell you, you're not healthy enough to go back to work yet."
That's true.
And so I was persuaded, also by other people, to call in sick.
Yeah. And are you feeling better?
Not necessarily.
You sound better.
Well, I still have that urge to cough in my chest. I try to resist it, especially now. But
yeah, but your voice is better and you're not as miserable.
yeah, this was not this previous Sunday, but the Sunday before that, I preached with a fever.
Yeah.
With a fever.
With a fever. Yes, because I was not gonna be able. I mean, I probably could have been up there, but
The last 2 weekends have been pretty big. Because the previous weekend we had the Valentine's Day banquet, and then you had like a couples marriage seminar the following day. Retreat.
Yeah, sounds better.
It was at the hotel here in Eichstätt. And it was Friday for the Valentine's Day banquet, where I gave a challenge to all the couples.
Yeah.
And then,
which was good. I think it was really good. Yeah.
There were a few people that came to me and said that they really appreciated that, and they really got the idea, for some reason, that they should invite me. The basic message was that give us opportunities to learn from the marriages that are here at the church.
Yeah.
They're wise. They have had experiences. They can share that with the singles, with the unmarried people.
Correct.
And so that can be something very, very valuable, especially looking forward. If you are in that sense investing in the singles and the unmarried people at the church, those, Lord willing, will eventually be married people and church leaders, pastor or deacons in the church.
Pastor wives.
Yes. And so you can already plant those seeds now, already bring up those young adults, so that by the time they do find a spouse, they've already had a few years of loose mentoring and discipling to help.
Yeah, that's very true.
And I think for some people, I don't think they maybe not thought about that before.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is similar to when do you prepare to for marriage. Usually when you have a partner or when you are engaged.
Yes.
And I always tell everybody they should already, if you don't have anybody in mind, then it's the best time to prepare for marriage. Because you will not lose anything. And if you have 6 months or 5 years, well, in those 5 years you can do much more than you can do in 6 months.
In preparing, you mean?
Correct, in preparing. And so a similar mindset there, well, for married people to consider that about singles, it is not on their radar usually.
And I didn't mention it on that Friday, but it did come to mind right away when you suggested that topic for that evening, because this was during my college years. I was in a 2-year-long relationship, and I eventually ended that relationship under the premise that I could not see her being a pastor's wife or a missionary's wife. And it was only after I had ended the relationship that then couples came to me and said, "Oh, I'm glad because they also saw those same problems."
Yeah.
And I was thinking, why didn't you tell me this the previous 2 years?
That's true.
Why only tell me now?
Now, to be fair, did you ask them?
I did not.
Ah, there you go. Why did you not? And I think that is actually because, I mean, I would do the same thing. I have an opinion usually. If I'm not asked for my opinion, I don't necessarily see the need to tell them.
Yeah.
Unless, now, in your sense, as you are a pastor and you would date somebody where I would see a danger, or not danger, but that could hinder that, I would say that. And also we have the relationship.
Yeah.
And I would hope you would ask me. But still, we have the relationship that I would say that. If you don't have the relationship, and if the other person doesn't ask, then, well, you see an issue. But a lot of times it's just it's not, most of the time it is, you see that it's not good, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
Similarly, as a pastor, you see people in your congregation, and you think that's not good, but it's not sin, and it's not really something to bring up yet. And so, asking is always important or helpful, but I think most people don't ask because they don't want to hear the answer.
They don't want to hear the truth.
Yeah, well, they don't want. They want to be encouraged in their path, but they don't want to hear if it's not something positive.
And so that was the challenge on that Friday.
Yes.
And then you had the couples retreat the following day. And I was not part of that, so I don't know how that went.
Yes, I have not received all the feedbacks yet.
Yeah.
But in general, without knowing what people think, so, but I have asked. I want to hear. It was, the purpose is, why do we do that marriage seminar at that retreat? Because I see a great danger for the marriages. They're attacked by Satan. One pastor said God loves marriages. Satan hates marriages. And God will do everything to protect the marriage. Satan will do everything to attack the marriage.
Yeah.
And I see just a great danger. And I see marriages under attack. Some from the outside, sometimes even from the inside. And so I wanted to, because we have quite a few couples in our church, I wanted to have a foundation for all the conversations I'm going to have with the couples. So let's say in 2 months somebody has a question about their marriage, or I want to talk to them about their marriage. I can go back to the foundation, which is that marriage seminar, and basing it on that. So now all the couples in our church are actually on the same page. Now, for some, it might have been a little too basic, and it's, well, I know all that. Well, then you shouldn't have any problems. And for some, it might be, ooh, that is a new revelation. And so, and plus, I was sick, so I could not really be as interactive as I usually would be. But in general, I think it was a good seminar, and it was a good idea.
And there were also unbelieving spouses that came too.
Yes, and they liked it. One regular visitor and one member with and their spouses do not come to church.
Yeah,
and they liked it. They were very glad they came. And which is great. I did have the gospel in it. I also emphasized that marriages are in order to glorify God. So if they got that for their marriage, wow, that's great.
Yeah. I think those Valentine's Day banquets in the past, unbelieving spouses have often come to that.
Yes.
And also unbelieving, couples have come to that too.
Yeah.
And whenever you give those challenges for a Valentine's Day banquet, or when you do weddings, which you've done a few times now, or when you preach about the marriage, I think this was a few years ago where you preached quite a few also difficult sermons on marriage, I think. And especially for those, some unbelieving spouses came too, and they liked it too. So they liked the idea of a biblical view of marriage.
Yes.
What's missing is the faith that is the foundation for that.
Yes.
That has not come yet.
Yeah. I had a conversation with somebody who is a guy who is married to an unbeliever. He got saved afterwards, and she does not want to come to church, and she doesn't really want to have anything to do with God. Now that there is a marriage seminar coming up, and she agreed that she will come to it, and she told him, because I want to make sure that they don't tell you anything wrong. And I said, yes, our first thought is, well, that's the wrong motivation, but I would say I don't care what motivation it is, because what she will hear is the truth, and ideally, actually, it's going to support your marriage, because the biblical view of marriage, especially if a female unbeliever hears that, I mean, that person will hear a lot the responsibility that the husband has, and which is, yes, being the head, and she should submit. But then when she hears all the things that he should do according to God's word, that's actually the dream for every woman.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that's going to develop.
And so that was that one Saturday.
Yes.
And then just a few days ago, we had the MIT Day.
Yes, that is true.
The Missions Information Day.
Yes. Or make with.
the Missionsinformationstag spells mit, which means come along or come with.
Okay.
So it's a smart wordplay, I think.
Yes.
A little bit.
Yeah, you can do a lot with that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it was the first of its kind over here.
Yes.
It's something that was kind of spontaneous too.
Well, it has been in planning for quite some time, and that event for a year. Almost a year.
No. It was an idea. When was our last meeting?
The pastor's meeting.
Perhaps, but at least actually sitting down and saying we would like to plan this.
Okay.
That was August or September.
Okay.
Because that was not. I think Christoph presented the idea at the pastors' meeting, but then at the missions agency meeting,
yes,
later on, that's when we all agreed to actually plan it. So that was, I think, August or September, maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah.
But it was inspired by the Global Reach Conference at Faith.
Correct. Yes.
Where you have where different missionaries come, or missions agencies come, and they have tables presenting their ministry, and then you have some sermons or speakers, and then you have people presenting their ministry.
Yeah.
And so that's what was inspired by that.
Correct.
And I was not sure how many people would show up.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it was quite spontaneous. We had about 5 months to plan it. I had nothing to do with the planning, but and so they try to reach out to different church planters or missionaries, or anything ministry related.
Correct.
And so a lot of the tables were a wide variety. We had the Theological Training Center from Erlangen, and then the Church Bible School from down south here, from Ingolstadt.
Yes.
Then we had a biblical counseling organization there.
Network Biblical Counseling, yes.
Yes. Then we had a drug house.
Yeah. Sure.
What's it called?
More like a rehab? Like a Christian
rehab center.
Rehab where you go after your when you want to integrate back into society, but especially in God's Word. Get your life back together.
Yes. And then we had an organization about children's ministry.
Then we had an organization regarding evangelism. So they have a bus or a tent gathering. And then we had also an organization for Chinese ministry.
Yeah.
And then also a tract society thing, which is Heuchelbach.
Yeah.
And
so they print the calendars that we hand out?
Correct.
Yeah.
And they have tracts and different things.
Yeah. And so you had all those tables there. Oh, including the church plant.
Yes. And then only one church, only you.
Yeah, I was the only one with a table.
Yes.
But then in the room next to it, there were different presentations.
Yes.
And the church plant from Erlangen was there, and then a church plant from
Erlangen,
Würzburg was there, and then myself.
Yes.
And so those were the different church plants presenting what's going on.
And it should have been Frank Krause as well, but he's sick.
Yes, there was. I think he had some kind of presentation that people read or something. So that was going on, but he was sick. He was not there. How many people would you say were there?
Well, I know. I was told 150.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I was guessing about 100, but 150 makes
150.
sense too.
It was hard to say because almost all the chairs were actually full. They had to add some benches. But because they squeeze them all together in the middle of the auditorium in Nuremberg. Nuremberg is a fairly large auditorium, but so therefore it was harder to gauge. But yeah, around 150 people.
And it was also a special day for us because this was the first day where officially the church plant was presented.
Yes.
Publicly with name and location and the core group and everything.
Yes, correct.
And so that was kind of special.
Yeah, I agree, and it's nice because when you think about it, I mentioned that in the Q&A that we had. Ingolstadt was present there.
Yeah.
And which is our mother church. And then were there, Eichstätt. And now the church plant by Greece is there. So you had actually 3 generations there, and still in touch, still helping each other. And so that was quite neat, because it is a generational thing that you can see. And there's the one church planted the other church, and that church is now planting another church.
And it's also good to see how the churches have evolved and grown over the years. I think it was your brother that presented like a very brief history of the churches there, and he presented like the 5 major ones.
The 5 in Bavaria.
In Bavaria, yes. And then how those churches have started other churches. And I remember when we were traveling back in the States and presenting the ministry in Germany, I would say, there's 7 churches here, and most of them have missionary pastors that are getting old, and there's no one to replace them.
Correct.
And now, 15 years after that, we in Bavaria alone, we have 11 fellowshipping churches on the Autobahn.
Yes.
And how many of them are like American pastors? There's 3?
1, 2, 3.
3.
Would you count yourself as an American?
Well, on paper I am. But
you could sign up for the German passport.
I know.
I'm not sure how much longer you can do that with the new government.
Well, the new government is not going to be working with the AfD, correct?
Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
We still can hope. Yeah, but so then we in Bavaria, because there's still a couple outside churches, Berlin, Ingelheim, but the ones in Bavaria, there are only Neumarkt or Frauendorf and Eckenthal who have an American pastor. All the other ones have a German pastor.
You just mentioned Berlin.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're counting the tallies up in Königs Wusterhausen as part of the fellowship.
Well, there's no direct fellowship.
Yeah.
But those are with BMM. Those are missionaries. They're not with.
They're not with BMM.
Oh,
like
they're with a missions agency.
Yes.
And so there's at least some distant. They're distant relatives.
Yes. Like they were much closer back in the day.
When you with BMM were up there.
Yes. Because they were our coworkers. They started with BMM, I think, and then they switched missions agencies, and then started their own church plant about an hour away, just outside of Berlin. So we still had a pretty tight fellowship with them, and through us, they had indirectly fellowship with everyone else down here in Bavaria, who is with BMM for the most part.
Yeah. Who were not anymore. Because now you have, in Bavaria.
In Bavaria, you only have
only
Mark Boyd Russell.
Yes, but he's not a pastor.
Yeah.
But then because Keith is not there with BIMI, I think, and
Daniel Arnold.
Daniel is with GFA.
Okay.
So from BMM, and then Luke but he's not in Bavaria. But with BMM, you actually have only one more missionary.
Yeah.
Right now.
And I report to Mom every Sunday. So
very good.
Or at least most Sundays, I try to call her. And when I give reports, and I do give her more details than other people because she's not going to meet anyone over here.
Probably not.
Probably not. Although in the summer she will meet quite a few people from here. Whenever I talk about how the churches are evolving and how we have 11 fellowshipping churches, how many churches have national pastors and also national deacons as well.
Yes.
And how there's church plants coming and how our fellowship is growing large enough where we also want to expand a little bit because there are churches of similar faith and practice that they are isolated, they are islands, and they are starving for fellowship.
Yeah.
And so now that the veteran missionaries are retired, we are at liberty, I suppose, to do something that was not possible, a few decades ago.
Yeah.
To expand our fellowship to churches of similar faith and practice.
Yeah.
And therefore expanding our area of influence even more.
Yes.
And whenever I tell Mom that, she goes, perfect. That's exactly what the original missionaries always wanted. They never wanted to start American churches. They never only wanted to have American missionaries. It was always the idea to transfer all that responsibility and autonomy and authority over to nationals. That has always been the goal. So the fact that we are talking about one BMM pastor in Bavaria, I think it's an encouraging thing.
Yeah.
Because that means the nationals are the ones leading their churches and not relying on American leadership.
Correct.
They could still rely on American support
Yes.
and guidance. I mean, we're all here.
Yeah.
But the churches are growing and being independent, and that's something really good.
Correct, and that's how it's supposed to be. And there you also see that the mission field has shifted from pioneer missionaries that start something from scratch to, there could be a pioneer missionary coming over but he shouldn't start from scratch.
Yeah.
He should work with the German churches. And now you don't have to come to Bavaria. You can go somewhere else in Germany, but then you will have the same problem as the churches that you mentioned that are starving for the fellowship because they're going to be alone, and that might be discouraging. And they will not have a team. But if they would come over even as a pioneer missionary, they could partner with the Germans and actually have the fellowship, the established fellowship already, and does not have to reinvent the wheel the whole time. Now, there's also the chance that you can come over as not the pioneer missionary, but that you come over in order to work with the German team. Because now I would say there is a lack of male leadership in our churches.
Yeah.
And if there is male leadership, they did not go to Bible school and all that. So there's a lack of that. But still, there are churches that are willing to start churches, to start church plants. And if you, as an American, come and support that, that is what Christoph and I actually we presented that to BMM. We would love that.
Yeah.
And there is the option for people coming over and to actually work with all the network of fellowshipping churches that we have.
Over here, you don't have the kind of church and or pastor culture like in the States. Like,
No.
We both went to Bible college, and we can probably name like a dozen people that they wanted to be a pastor.
Correct.
Here, even with faithful and mature churchgoers, if you ask, you want to be a pastor, they are very, very reluctant
Yes.
to take on that kind of role. You might find someone, but oftentimes they're very, very reluctant.
Yeah. Which part of that is, in America, you could become a pastor and you don't have to get a second job. In Germany, it is very likely that you have to have a second job in order to be a pastor.
Yeah.
Because the churches are not even too small, but they don't have the resources. Like in the States, there could be a smaller church, but if you don't have to pay for your building, then you have other funds. And most churches that we're talking about. Now, some of them don't have an own building, but they have a certain fund. Some churches would say, okay, well, we're going to meet at a gym until we have 200, 300 people. Well, we will stay at the gym forever. It's a different mentality that Americans that have not been in Germany or in contact with us, they wouldn't know that. So there's the lucrative part of, okay, I could have even as a calling, but also as a job, being a pastor in America, in Germany, that is not necessarily. So if you want to get somebody, hey, do you want to be a pastor? So do you want to have no money? Yes.
You're basically asking, hey, do you want to have a life of poverty?
Correct.
That's what you're asking.
Yes.
Without having that I don't know, honorable reputation of being a pastor. Because if you're not a reverend, or if you're not a priest,
Yes.
then you're a sect leader, a cult leader.
Yes. It's true.
And so the question is, do you want to be a poverty-stricken cult leader? That is the question that people are hearing then.
It's probably not the best strategy best job description.
No, it's not. It's not. I think we mentioned this a few months ago, but churches here are not only smaller in church members, but also younger. The churches here could be 20 years old, 30 years old. Like the oldest ones here are like 40.
That would be Bad Hebrun's probably the oldest one.
Yeah. But the rest are, 5 to 10 years old.
Yeah.
Even if there's faithful giving, which here you have first-generation Christians. So you have first-generation Christians in a church plant or a church which is 5 to 10 years old. You don't have that kind of funds to purchase anything or to rent anything of any significant size.
Yeah.
And so finance is always going to be a little bit of a problem.
And we see that right now with our in our current situation. And we just talked about it with the deacons the other day.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because the building that we have right now, we are auditorium wise at our limit.
Yeah.
We cannot expand. So if we would rent something bigger, we would double our rent, which we cannot afford.
No.
And so the better option is to actually buy something that we cannot afford, because the payment every month would be less than we would pay for rent.
Yeah.
But of course, to have $1 million, and that is a realistic number, to have $1 million for us as a church is, well, it's way out there. So that's why we started the GoFundMe.
Yeah.
With, of course, Germans are able to give, or Americans are able to give, and hopefully we can get a certain sum at least, so that we can get a loan from the bank. Because right now we don't even have enough for a down payment.
How much would the down payment be?
Probably around $200,000-300,000.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's a big number, but at least smaller than $1 million.
That is true. Yes.
And of course, with that, we rely heavily on the states, because with 46 members, we cannot afford $1 million. We cannot afford 300,000.
No.
We're at our limit, paying about $2,000 on rent every month. That's that's what our budget is.
Yes, correct. And that is, and again, that is not. I mean, the church supports me financially, but not even part-time job wise, and they don't pay you part-time job.
No.
So we do support missionaries, which I think is good and important.
Yeah.
But seeing all that. Of course, churches in the States ask, well, how far is your church to fully support you? I don't know if they will ever be. Because of the taxes, we lose so much money. The church would have to have triple that what I get in order to give me a normal salary. And so it's just, in America it's a little easier. Because of certain exemptions and of the way it is all set up. But it's interesting to view it that way.
The only churches that fully support their pastor are the two largest ones, Nuremberg and Erlangen.
Correct.
And they have over 100 members, 150?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if members 150, but in a service.
Yeah. And so only then is fully supporting one pastor a possibility. Anything beyond that, the pastor will be having a part-time job at least, or a full-time job.
A full-time job, yes. Yeah, and well, going back to that day that we had, the Mission Information Day, it was in the beginning I expected something different.
Oh, okay.
Partially because I knew of some conversations that were happening, and so I thought, okay, maybe it is also where kids could go to do like an internship, youth. Well, what can they do? Maybe a year. Like we used to have a social service year, or like a military 1 year, or but that is not in Germany anymore. But something like that.
I had something like that, like that was in my mind, and that's why I had that little tiny piece of paper that said,
like a little job description.
Job description, or what we're looking for.
Yes,
like either we're looking for coworkers, we're looking for chairs, we're looking for this, we're looking for that, so that they know how they can personally help us, even through material stuff and through finances as well. So, I thought it was going to be more like that too.
Yeah, but maybe next time.
Yeah.
Because this time the focus was church planting, and which is interesting because we had a Q&A, and then there were also people there that are not in our church fellowship, but they heard about that day, and they are thinking about church planting, and so they wanted to hear, okay, how do they do it? How do we do it? What are our ups and downs? And so I thought that was very good.
Yeah,
it was very helpful.
It was the very first time we did something like
that. And definitely not the last time. I could imagine it's going to happen again, and maybe it will turn into more like a missions conference. I could see that happening. I know some churches have missions conferences, but maybe it will be more like a church. Parachurch missions conference.
The group that organized it was the Mission Mensch, or the Mission Humanity. I called it M&M.
There you go.
Which was founded in 2022, I believe it was. And I was part of that, one of the founding members of that.
Yes. Yes.
Which was a German missions agency to take over the different responsibilities that the American missionaries had back in the day. So again, trying to take over roles that previously were being led by mostly BMM for the most part.
Correct. Yes. And maybe it will turn into something where it's going to be maybe something like a job fair, where people could see, okay, in which area could I be active, or what could I do in order to support my local church by also having a job in a Christian environment. And now that would not necessarily be working for a church, but it would be it would include at least some ministry.
Yeah.
And so that will be interesting to see as well.
So be good to see how that develops and what fruit comes from that.
Correct.
It was pretty cool presenting the church plant for the first time, and then our name for the first time as well.
Yes.
When, as a core group, we were talking about the church name, many of us were wanting to have something kind of trendy.
Because you want to be cool.
You want to be cool. You want to be different, right?
Yes, that's...
And so I actually went through about 50 names, I think. Some that were names on the location, like the Seven Valley Church, because there's 7 valleys there. like there's a resort there called the Seven Valley Resort. So I mean, it's names that are tied to the location.
Yes.
Or you go into Hebrew names, or you go into Greek names. The problem there is that you can't take ecclesia, because that's
almost a denomination already.
It's a charismatic denomination, so you can't take that one. Then the problem is, if you take something else, they're not going to know what that is. Soteria might sound cool, but no one's going to know what soteria is. If you take something Latin, then you just sound kind of
Catholic.
Catholic.
Yeah, but you also probably have to add to that. It is not very common to give your church a name.
No.
So it is usually, and it does not sound in general. For example, Grace Church. Hey, that sounds good. Well, in German, Gnadegemeinde, it does not roll off the tongue as smooth as it does in English.
Yeah.
And so it is. So it's not a very common thing. It happens, but it's not very common.
In Berlin, there's the Gnadengemeinde, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Eckstein, I know. I don't know about Gnadengemeinde.
Gnadengemeinde as well.
Yeah.
I think the pastor there is actually Swiss.
Oh, there you go.
Because I was talking to him, 5 years ago. That was the Gnadengemeinde.
Okay.
And then I also was considering Cornerstone, Eckstein, but no one outside of our churches will have any idea what a cornerstone has to do with anything biblical.
Correct, yeah.
And then Rivka, one of the ladies from our core group, said, what about hope? Hoffnung. And I thought, well, we can do like A New Hope, because that's Star Wars.
There you go. Yeah, I think that would be very trendy.
Yes, yes. And because we wanted something that was actually German. I mean, you can be cool and trendy with something Greek or Hebrew, but we wanted something that is actually German. And that's why Hoffnunggemeinde was something that we fell in love with right away. But then the question is, all of our fellowshipping churches here all have almost the exact same name, which is the Freie Baptistengemeinde.
Yes.
Which frei does mean free or independent, but not in like the American denominational sense.
Correct, yeah.
It simply means you're independent from the state or any...
Or parachurch organization.
Yeah. And I was the only one from our core group that said it'd be nice to still add the Free Baptist somewhere in the name, because if you, and this is something,
You're the only one.
Yeah, yeah. This is something that you told me that when they Google, because a Freikirche, a free church, is basically means it's a church that's not Catholic and not Lutheran.
Correct.
At least not main Catholic or Lutheran. And so people do know what a free church is, and they can be Googling a free church or a free Baptist. And then they will find all of our fellowshipping churches, because they all have that in the name. And so that's why I said, even though we are not a denomination over here, we're not a convention, it's still kind of like a trademark, where they know that we belong together.
Correct.
And so we can say, hey, I go to the Hope Church, but on the sign, and then like the legal name would be the Hope Church Independent Baptist or Free Baptist in Beingries. Yeah. Tying it to the city, tying it as a trademark to our fellowshipping churches, but then something distinctly us and our group, the Hope Church. Yeah. So that's where we got our name from.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's good, and I think it's totally valid. And I asked the church in the beginning. Well, I asked our core group back in the day.
Yeah.
Should we call ourselves Freie Baptisten? And because I'm not bound to that.
Yeah.
And we ended up with it because if you just call yourself Baptist, okay, then if you type it, and that's what I told you, whatever name it is, I don't care, but type it in and see what the first few things come up. Yeah. Because that's what people will see. So if you type in Baptist, then it's actually the Baptist Union that will come up. And if you type in Christians, well, then anything comes up.
Yeah.
And if you want them to Google you, so they know who you are, but then they will Google that, whatever you have in your name, and if that does not help them to understand what you believe or stand for, well then... And so we said, okay, actually the best thing that we can do is Freie Baptisten. Yeah. And because that will connect them to the fellowshipping churches that we are fellowshipping with. Yeah. And it will give them an idea. Now, we do have a doctrinal statement on our website, but it will give them still an idea what our fellowshipping church... Oh, okay, so you're fellowshipping with those. And that's helpful.
Yeah, that's something that's actually, it's helpful and it makes sense. And when people come visit us, it's because they Googled free church. For the most part, they Google free church, and there's no one here but besides us, so they find us. Trying to see what kind of results you get through Googling certain words kind of helps that as well. And when you go to Beingries, it's a lovely town, and you can easily fall in love with it. And when you're there, at least I and other people in our core group, we do have that sense of this is a very hopeful town. You have a lot of it's very family and children focused. Schools there as well. You also have parks. Then you have a golf course. Then you have a tent location, a camping spot, campgrounds. Thank you. And so it's a place that you really have a sense of hope when you go there. And that's why we did focus on that.
I thought you did it because you want to give hope.
Well, that too. In the flyers, I wrote, like, hope from Eichstätt to Beingries.
There you go.
But, yeah, hope you guys are doing well. I've heard that Iowa's been sick, and we're sick, so everyone's sick.
That's right.
So get well soon, and, of course, stay frosty.
Yeah. Don't stay frosty because you might get sick.
Stay toasty.
Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.